I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. Now, we're scanning complete many flocks around the country. We chat to Sheep Specialist Michael Gottstein about making use of this information. We start off talking about the immediate management changes that can be made, especially set up feeding groups. And he also highlights the importance of assessing and managing new conditions this season. We discuss pregnancy rate and some of the causes for higher empty rates in flocks. We finished up the episode chatting about how we can use this information to highlight key areas to focus on, both in the short and longer term. We start off with Michael talking about this year's scanner results.
Look, I suppose it's the time of the year. I suppose December, January and early February where most of the kind of mid-season and hill flocks will be starting to scan sheep. And scanning is an important kind of a task on the farm because it enables us to identify, how the mating season has gone, and to identify, I suppose, ewes that aren't going to be productive, ewes that are empty, and maybe take a few steps to kind of help us, maybe particularly, I suppose, if we're highly stocked or stuff, there's ewes there that are on their last chance, their last year maybe, and now they're empty. We can sell them rather than feeding them on through and finding out at a later stage when we're lambing that they're not actually in lamb. So scanning is a useful task, and I suppose a lot of people are doing it now at the moment here. And some people are doing it, I suppose, for the scheme, maybe for the sheep improvement scheme. But really, I suppose everybody should be kind of doing it and making use of that information.
No, Michael, I think you're fully right. It's one of the most useful pieces of information we collect throughout the year on farms, both in terms of how we manage a flock and also how we review it. And I suppose that's something we're going to talk to you a bit more about. Look, anecdotally, Michael, and I'm sure you've had it too from scanners, it's been variable this year in terms of the reports of scanner results coming back.
Yeah, I'd say very much up and down. So we're hearing lots of different reports. I suppose we probably thought that was going to happen anyway, Kieran, because we were looking at a lot of some of the body condition scores from some of the flocks we were dealing with in the Better Farm program, for example, and we had a good bit of variation there. On some farms they were quite good, and on some farms they were very, very poor. A lot of thin ewes, a lot of suboptimal ewes at mating time, reflection maybe of the difficult grazing conditions and things like that. So, scanning is it's a time, really, I suppose the main thing now for people is it is what it is. And, the rams have been taken up in most cases from the flocks at this stage. So whatever's in lamb is in lamb, and that's what we have. It's about making the best of that information now, making the most use of it, and using that information to try and maximize the performance of the sheep flock.
And that really does kind of lead us into the key aspect. But the first thing we have to do when we talk about management of it, it's really that segregation, Michael, and planning your nutritional regime for these ewes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really about identifying. So we're dividing ewes into single twins and triplets. That's what happens on most farms. But there's really a lot more divisions that can be happening. So obviously it depends on how they're managed. So if the sheep are outside and they're being fed outside, supplementary fed forage and concentrates, and it's about dividing them up outside into different paddocks or areas. If they're inside in a shed, and a lot of farmers, I suppose, still kind of run big bunches of sheep together in the shed, and then it's a little bit more difficult. But really, we should be trying to make an effort to divide them into, in an ideal world, where we have lots of pens to divide up sheep. In an ideal situation, we should be dividing them based on litter size, so that's single, twins, and triplets or more. And then also on lambing date. So if we have rattled the rams and we know that these are the ewes that are lambing the first 2 weeks, and these are the ewes that are lambing in the second 2 weeks of the mating season, then of the lambing season, then we should be dividing the later lambing ones into separate groups as well, so that they're not being start and feed at the same time as the earlier lambing ewes. That there's a significant saving in feed there. But also, I suppose, very important this year is that we look at body condition score. And we should be putting the thin singles in with the twins and putting the thin twins in with the triplets, so that they're getting a little bit of extra feed. And I think that's very easy to do on all farms. I mean, what I would say is certainly at a minimum divide into single, twins, and triplets. And then if you can, in that situation, then you'd be putting the thin single ones in with the twins, the thin twin ones in with the triplets. And as a minimum, we should have three groups. If we can have more divisions, then that's better. We can divide them according to when they're due to lamb. And look at, I suppose the other thing then is putting out the dries, looking in to see what percentage of the ewes are dry. And that's a big or very important number. So really we'd be trying to get pregnancy rates up over 94%, 94, 95% of ewes pregnant. So I mean that's kind of 5 or 6 ewes in 100 not scanning in lamb. I suppose that's what we're aiming to kind of get to. We've often seen flocks up at 97, 98%. And we often see flocks down at 85 and 88%. And look at if there's a big percentage of yours that are empty, Kieran, then we need to go and have a look and see why is that happening. And in particular, are those thin ewes that are those empty ewes or ewes that are thin?
It always raises those other questions. So you could have the ram problems, which I know you've discussed with me previously. Hopefully that will be kept a minimum. Good management might get around it. The thinner ewe one this year, Michael, as well. Like as part of the review of that condition score, you would expect some of the empties would be thinner, but also maybe a few more of the singles this year are thinner. It's a good chance for you to go back and just look at the effect that has on it on your own farm.
Yeah, absolutely. So go through the ewes that are when you're scanning the ewes or when you're dividing the ewes up for housing or for segregating them out into the different groups, it's a good time to handle them and just have a look and see if you notice that a lot of the single ewes are thin, then obviously that's an issue, and maybe that's the reason why they're carrying one lamb instead of multiples. Look at there could also be ewes that are just inherently fertile and are also thin, so twins and triplets, and maybe looking at things like the teeth and things like that on those ewes. Is there a reason why they might be thin? And then maybe picking out those thinner ewes for preferential feeding or earlier feeding or better quality forage, or so there's lots of different ways of dealing with those ewes. I mean, for people who would say who are lambing from the middle of March onwards, we're still kind of 10 weeks out from lambing. So for a lot of those flocks, they won't be maybe starting meal feeding for another 3 weeks or so. And then it's about maybe picking out those thinner ewes and either preferentially feeding them better quality silage or giving them a small little bit of meal to try and gain some body condition before you get into the last kind of 6 weeks before lambing, because it's very hard to change body condition in the last 6 weeks before lambing. Whatever feed you pump into the ewes at that stage, it's going to be put into the lambs. And that's not what we want really. We don't want really big lambs and ewes in poor condition. We want to try and get ewes into a reasonable condition and have a reasonable size lamb.
I think your short-term actions there are vital to implement at the moment, particularly given the year we've been in. You also mentioned them longer-term actions. So some of that is planning the improved condition score right the way through. And look, we know after a difficult year that has its own challenges. You also touched on something else there. Maybe some of them ewes could have been selected out for culling, maybe were kept just for the sake of numbers. It does raise that question of carrying passengers every year. I'm not only on about the empties, but maybe the thin single ewes are carrying. They're not really helping the system much, Michael.
No, absolutely not. So look, there's a lot of work done on that. Ewes that are thin have poor outcomes in terms of being able to rear their lambs. Successfully rearing their lambs, and also they have lambs that do a lot poor and don't put on as much weight as quickly as their comrades from the ewes that are in good body condition. So those are ewes that are really not very efficient. They're the inefficient sheep. They're what we often call the passengers. They're costing us extra to keep them. It's more challenging to finish their lambs. So anything you can do, I suppose, to reduce body condition loss in late pregnancy is beneficial. And I suppose that's what people should be targeting for. So look at in flocks where the number of thin ewes is relatively small, and we have seen some of those flocks where the number of ewes that are kind of, 2.75 body condition score or less at mating time, when we were doing the body condition scores, those flocks don't really have a problem with that. But we've also seen flocks where, 30% of the ewes are in that, poor category. And in that situation, those flock owners need to take action. Because an awful lot of the ewes are thin and in poor body condition, and that's going to have an impact on them for the coming year.
Look, we mentioned we're after covering some aspects. I suppose the other thing is, look, scanning gives us a benchmark for performance. It's the total number of lambs we could potentially have for the give or take within reason. So it's a useful figure, Michael, to look back at and maybe challenge ourselves, say, is it high enough? But also it's a useful figure in terms of reviewing even from last year's scan. How many of them actually made it as far as sale? What was the impact on the whole system? What management aspects could we tweak?
Yeah, so I suppose the scanning is the sowing is where you measure what you've sown, and it's the amount of lambs, the maximum amount of lambs that we could potentially have is what we have at scanning time, and then we start, having the losses. So you have the ewes that abort, the ewes that die, the lambs that maybe succumb at lambing time, die at lambing time, or are born stillborn. And then we have losses after lambing, when lambs go to the field. But so if we add up what we have at scanning time, that's generally the highest number you're going to see. And from there on, then it's trying to minimize the losses. So it's a useful figure, and I suppose it sets the story, I suppose, in terms of what can be achieved. If that figure is low, then look at the whole year ahead is going to be governed by that. It's not going to get any better. And I suppose then it's useful at that stage to ask the question, well, how can we improve on this? And there's a number of ways of improving that. One is reducing the number of barren ewes. The second one will be reducing the number of singles to try and increase the number of twins. And really, I suppose what all the research is showing, whether we look at National Farm Survey data, whether we look at our research data from Athenry, whether we look at profit monitor analysis in the past or things like that, it's litter size, the number of lambs that you have to sell per ewe. That's what drives the profitability. And the target, if we go back and look at some of the ACOT videos going back to the 1980s, the target that time was 1.6 lambs weaned. That was the benchmark that was out there for a productive sheep flock. So, and generally, look at in most cases, a 1.6 lambs weaned per ewe to the ram is a scanning, somewhere about 1.8, 1.9. And because, between MTOs and losses and all of those bits, that's the reduction that we see. So people should have a look at that figure, see how it compares to last year and maybe the year before. If you're consistently low and you find that you're consistently scanning, low figures, or maybe scanning high but weaning low, rearing low, so a lot of losses happening after scanning time, whether that's before ewes lamb or after ewes, or at lambing time or after ewes lamb, or both, then basically, take stock of that and, take steps to improve it.
Taking it on board, putting in the management changes, you suggested that's a key aspect to look at now for the next couple of weeks, and then maybe the longer term effects you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's now is the time to take action. And it's like the old Chinese saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So the best time to have ewes in good body condition was before mating, but the second best time to deal with that situation is now. When we're kind of, halfway through pregnancy, we still have time to make up some ground, and to improve the situation. And I suppose, look, at most people will be scanning ewes. It's what you do with that information. It's the steps you take then with that information in terms of how you deal with singles, twins, and triplets, and then also looking at body conditions, so thinner singles with the twins, thinner twins with the triplets. And if people did just those three bits of dividing up, it would pay dividends for them in terms of having ewes lambing down in better condition, more milk, healthier lambs, and better outcomes.
Mike, good having you on. Thanks for that.
Okay, thanks, Kieran.
We'll finish it up at that point. As Michael has indicated, scanning is one of the most useful management tasks we can complete on farm. To get the most out of it though, we need to make use of that information both in the short term and making use of it in the longer term in terms of reviewing how we actually got that scan result and what are the key areas we can focus on to improve it. That's it for me for this episode. For updates from our sheep programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more episodes.